Tov, shalom uvracha. And we'll start with the shalom because today's letter is Shin, which of course stands for shalom. There seems to be a lot to say in this letter, so I'm not even going to do the introduction. I'm just going to jump straight into it. And I just will mention the last two letters, the hundreds, which was the Kuf Re Shin, right? The Kuf was 100, and we said Kuf was like 100 is number one, but in the hundreds on the global level. One is Hashem, one is the influence from above. But we said one is also Kof is like a monkey, an imitator, and we said that's the quality of the Kuf. And then the Reish is 200, could be the head, could also be the Rasha, but he was the antithesis. Just like we have the AlephBet and the Yud and the Kaf, the two opposites. Aleph was Elokim and Bet is the house. And now, if that's the case, then we have three, it's always synthesis. So 300, the Shin, is going to be some sort of synthesis, but on a very, very big level. And you just look at the letter Shin, even before we talk about the shape, you see three sticks sticking out on top, and the number 3 comes to light. So let's jump straight into our normal template and see what the name of the letter Shin is. Okay, the root Shin is the basis of the word Shinui, change. Okay, and it's interesting that the words Shbira, which is destruction, to break something, and Shlemut, perfection, also begin with a Shin. And the idea is that it's in order to bring around real change, sometimes you have to break things. Sometimes you have to break the muskamot, the acceptance, the accepted levels, norms that were before, to start something new. And that brings a new level of shlemut, a new level of destruction. I think it was Lenin who said that in order to make omelets, you have to break eggs. Rav Kook, for example, in a time where the Haskalah, the Enlightenment started, where people were leaving Torah and were no longer religious, and most of the Orthodox rabbis saw this as something really tragic and something terrible. And Rav Kook wasn't happy about it, but he said there's something very positive about it. They're breaking the old Judaism, the old level of Yahadut that we have, and coming towards a new level of Judaism, a far deeper level of Judaism that's preparing us for the Messianic era. So that's the idea of Shinui in order for Shlemut, Shvira in order for positive change. The name, if you take away the Yud, you get the word Shein, which is a tooth. Now that's exactly what your teeth do, right? Your teeth take food, and this apple in its raw form is not something that can be swallowed, can be digestible, but the tooth takes it and destroys it, breaks it, and then prepares it to become part of me, which is actually perfection of the apple. Because when the apple becomes part of me, then it's on a high, it gets raised to a higher level. The apple is now human and not just a fruit. It's interesting that so I wrote that eating, what the tooth does, is actually the first stages of the process of life, right? It prepares life because food is what gives you life, and the teeth prepares it. It's interesting that the strongest part of the strongest muscle in the body is actually the jaw muscle, which when I was preparing this shiur, I actually saw it's called the masseter. Never knew that. We actually mentioned in a shiur this morning, most of the Kiddush Bibles that show Samson, Shimshon killing the lion, show him putting open the lion's jaw, which is very hard to believe as strong as Samson was. But the word shasai probably means that he pulled the animal apart by its legs and killed it that way, and not necessarily its jawbone, because the jawbones are the strongest muscle. And why am I saying it? Is because that's what the tooth is. It's got this power to totally destroy, but for a positive purpose, getting food into our cell, into our bodies. Obviously, this is taking food, eating on a positive level of growth, etc., and not to the place where we eat too much and we have to go on diet. Okay, so that's the name Shin, and the numerical value, as we said earlier, is 300. We already said last week and the week before that once we get to the hundreds, each step is a big step. So when you take big steps, you progress faster, but you also have the greater danger of falling. People who are very wealthy tend to make a lot of money very quickly, even more money. But when they fall, God forbid, they fall very fast. I wrote a comment, a quote over here. Kol tzad kolel kol הצעדים שקדמו לה. There's a pasuk in Chagai, in the prophet Chagai, that says, Gadol yeh kvod bait hazeh, האחרון מן הבית הראשון, אמר השם צבקות, ובמקום הזה אתן שלום, נאום השם צבאות. Okay, he's talking about the future temple, the second temple. And the second temple, according to the literal translator, this house will be even bigger than the previous house, than the previous temple. Now, I remember when my mom got married, the second marriage at the age of 80, and a friend of mine that I worked with, Abram Pupko, he told me a fascinating commentary on this pasuk. You can translate this slightly differently. The word gadol yiyeh kavod habayit hazeh min ha'acharon, from the acharon, it could mean it'll be bigger than the first house, or it'll be bigger as a result of the first house. In other words, everything that we do, every step that we take, is an inclusion of all the steps that we did before. Okay, when somebody goes to university and learns the most advanced sciences that there are in the world, he's actually using the small steps of basic arithmetic that he learned in Kita Aleph, in first grade. And that means that when you're taking these big steps, when you're jumping from Kuf to Resh, and you're taking these big steps, you've got to remember that what gave you the koach for these big steps were the teeny steps that you did before. And that is Gadol Habayit Hasheni Min HaRishon. And Abraham says, I can use this for the second marriage of my mother at the time, that even though it's a completely new marriage, a completely new relationship, for both of them, there's something over there that's built on the experience and the strength that each of them received from their first marriages. So if we're talking about three, we said three is synthesis. Okay, we said it in the AlephBet Gimel, it was the Gomel, the combination of Aleph Elokim and Bet the house, or in the Yud was Hashem, Kaf is the Kli, the vessel, and Lamed is the teacher who combines them together. Here we have the ultimate synthesis on the level of the hundreds. The ultimate we're coming close to the end of the alphabet. Next time we learn will be the end of the alphabet, Bezrat Hashem. Not next week, it's Purim, it'll be the week after. But we're talking about the ideal synthesis. And there's approximately, it depends on the year, but there are approximately 300 days in the years that we don't put on tefillin. Now, tefillin are something that bring us to perfection. The days that we don't put on tefillin, like Shabbat and Yom Tov, are the days that we don't need it, because we already have attained a type of perfection. In the words of the rabbis, the tefillin is called a Brit, the Shabbat's called a Brit, so you don't need another Brit, another covenant on the day you have a covenant. The sound Shin is two things that are similar to each other. The one is silence, right? In I think in most languages, in Hebrew and English at least, when you ask somebody to keep quiet, you say shh. Okay, sometimes people make more noise saying shh than the noise itself, I'm sure. But there's something that's silence. Now, silence is actually a very, very powerful sound. Okay, and I quoted here from the Book of Kings when Eliyahu Hanavi, Elijah the prophet, has his revelation, and first there's a big noise, and there's thunder and lightning, and then there's a wind, and in none of these Hashem is revealed to him. And afterwards there's silence, and these are the words, partial the words. Lo beruach Hashem, in the great wind, Hashem's not there, not in the lo berash Hashem, not in the big noise, and lo be'esh Hashem, not in the big fire that Eliyahu was exposed to. Ba'achara eish, after all these three, and finally the fire, kol dmama daka, a very quiet voice. Again, it's an oxymoron, a voice that's quiet. But sometimes when people talk quietly, the effect is far more than somebody screaming. And then that is the Shin. Okay, when we get to this perfection on this synthesis on the global level, you have somebody who doesn't need to shout. I remember they taught us when we were in B'nai Kiva in South Africa, and we had a lot of these Jews for Jesus trying to get to us. And one of the tricks they taught us is that when they start arguing with you, you'll get excited. And when you raise your voice, they'll say to you, why are you getting excited? And their calmness could just set you back. There's a power in a calm, quiet voice. Another sound, another aspect of the sound of the Shin, and it could be the Shin or the Sin, right? Depends on which side the dot is it's a smooth sound, right? Compared to the Resh, not like us Chutzikim say Resh, Resh that South American said, or Resh that an Israeli will say, is a noisy letter. You hear Resh, whereas Shin is very smooth. It's a smooth sound, okay? So the growth of the Shin is through harmony, because the Shin has managed to bring these two extremes together and brought harmony together. And that's why we don't need to raise our voice. And even if we do make a sound, it's sh or s, which is a very soothing sound. Finally, the shape of the Shin, it's got three sticks, okay? You could see the left-hand one either as a vav, as a zayin, sorry, and the other two as vavs, or some people say it's like three vavs. But the point is the same thing. If we say that the vav is the letter of transmission, of connection, here you have the ultimate connection. You have three connections, all from slightly different or different extremes coming together at a common base. Okay, and if you say it's a zayin, that's because the one on the side has brought Hashem, has brought the Yud into its vav to complete it, and that's what brings the perfection. And this hints, okay, this hints at the, as I've said a few minutes ago, at the combination of AlephBet Gimel, the three main letters, or Yud Kaf Lamed, the three main letters. And others also comment that the Shin looks a little bit like the tooth in two different ways. It could be a jawbone with three teeth sticking out, or it could be a molar tooth with that's got all these three bumps around them, and then that shape relates to the name Shin that we mentioned earlier, the tooth on the top here, that brings about the change that we spoke about. And finally, the first letter in the alphabet that starts with the letter Shin is, when it's talking about the Shemayim, the fifth letter of the alphabet, of the Torah, Vayikra Elohim l'rakia Shamayim, Vayer Vayiboker Yom Sheni. Okay, I think it's the eighth letter. Hashem called the heavens Shamayim, and then there was evening, morning and evening, and we have the second day. In other words, we now have, for the first time in creation, heavens and earth. And at the end of the day, Hashem brings them together as in light and day and night, that they're working in harmony. And that is the Shin that brings them together. Rashi brings on the Torah several explanations of the word Shamayim. One explanation is Sham Mayim, over there is water, even though in the heavens is water. Another explanation is it's a combination of Eish Mayim, Shamayim. And the idea here is that you have the two opposites. You have the Eish and water, which don't normally live together, but in the heavens, they somehow live together, right? You have lightning and rain coming from the same source and living in harmony, just like the Shin has these two extremes living in harmony. And there's something in Rav Zamir's book called the electrosphere, which is just like you have the hemisphere, you have some sort of electric field around us, which is this Aish, which is the fire that's in the heaven. Okay, so those are the 5 main qualities, and now we're going to look at some other qualities, and I'm running quickly because there's lots of ideas to cover, and we're going to try and get to them all. So first, the Gemara about the little kids saying very nice things. Shin is definitely seen as something negative, as sheker, okay? And this depends on how you get to Rosh, right? Remember last week we said that there's Reish is the Rosh, and if you really want to get to be a Rosh, a leader in the correct way, you go in order. First you do the Kuf, you Kadosh. First you Tzaddik, sorry, you do the right things, that's the number 90, and you do the right deeds, and that makes you holy, that makes you Kadosh, that's the Kuf. And when you've done that in the right order, you can become a Shin, then you can become Reish, the leader, and that will be the person who can make this change in a positive way. But if you change the letters, you change the order, then you get sheker, right? And if you look at the word sheker, you see it's actually, the letters are in the wrong order. You've got 3 consecutive letters of the alphabet, Kuf, Resh, Shin, but in the wrong order. The Gemara also mentions, this is actually relates to next week's letter, the Taf, which is considered the representing Emet, truth. The difference between to Emet, truth, and Sheker is that Emet is also 3 letters, but it's the first letter of the alphabet, the last letter of the alphabet, and the middle letter of the alphabet. Truth is all-encompassing, from Aleph to Taf, from the beginning to the end. There's no such thing as a local truth or a half-truth. But Sheker is very local, it's 3 consecutive letters. Emet, the numbers are in the correct order. Aleph becomes before Mem, and Mem becomes before Taf. Sheker, as we said, is in the wrong order. And finally, if you look at each letter separately, each of the letters of Sheker stands on one leg. It's not stable. Okay, Shin stands on a spike, Kuf stands on the leg, Resh, because falseness doesn't last, doesn't hold. Emet, as opposed to it, each of the letters has got a base, two sticks that make it stable, because Emet is something that's all eternal. Okay, 2 of Hashem's names begin with the letter Shin and relate to this Shin, what I call tripod or triangle, this perfect combination of the 2 extremes. And the two words are Shagai, Shin Dalet Yud, pronounced Shaddai. It's because it's like saying Hashem's name, so sometimes people say Shakai instead of Shaddai. And the other one is Shalom. And by the way, some people don't know that Shalom is actually one of Hashem's name. And if you're in the toilet public toilet, and your friend walks in, you should not say to him Shalom, because it's one of Hashem's names that you shouldn't say in the toilet. And if your name happens to be Shalom, it's you shouldn't be called, or your friends shouldn't call you in the toilet. But what are these 2 names in terms of the Shin that we just said? Shaddai, the Gemara says, She'amar le'olamo dai, right? They take the Shin from the word She'amar, and the dai means enough, okay? Hashem said to the world, dai. Part of the growth is knowing when to stop growing. As we said when we spoke about the pear, it's also poor. Part of talking effectively is knowing when to shut up and be quiet. And one of the greatest powers of Hashem is knowing when to hold back and when it's enough. And that brings the balance that we spoke about between growth and control. And the other name is Shalom, which the people say, why do we say Shalom when we say hello, when we say Shalom when we say goodbye? Not because the old joke that Israelis don't know if they're coming or going, but because Shalom is all-encompassing. And Shalom is also peace. In other words, Shalom is Shlemut, is perfection. So when we say Shalom to somebody, 2 people, or 2 different people, come together, and therefore we say, this is Shalom, this is Shlemut. this is a new entity that's the freedom, right? Because they say 1 + 1 is not 2, 1 + 1 is a new entity, is the third entity. And when they say goodbye, then they each take this completeness and take it into the world further and spread the shalom and make even a broader shlemut. Another place that, and we're going to see a whole lot of threes in a moment, but one of the places where 3 jumps out is the rainbow. Now you could jump and say, but there's 7 colors in the rainbow. The truth is there are actually infinite colors in the rainbow. But we know that all the colors in the world are made up of the 3 basic colors, RGB, right? Red, green, blue. And by mixing these 3 colors in different relationships to each other, you can get any color from the next level of representation of the 3 colors are 7 colors. And beyond that, it just goes on forever. And this is also symbolized in the sequence that we spoke about, the 3, the 30, the 300, and we could go into 3,000, 30,000 forever. Okay, and I'm going to just go through quickly a whole lot of 3s that appear, and it just to show you how global, how universal this idea of 3 is. We definitely have 3 fathers, Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, and we spoke about them in the past, that they symbolize the AlephBet Gimel. And this is the 3 sfirot, the 3 pipes, the vessels that influence us. Abraham is the chesed, he's outgoing, he's the starter of Judaism. Yitzchak is the din, he stabilizes it, he says to the world to die, ad kan. He doesn't go out of Israel, he doesn't change his name like Abraham to Abraham. And Yaakov is a combination of the 2. Yaakov has aspects of Abraham and Yitzchak. And this is the chesed, din, and emet, which we said in the first lectures relates to the AlephBet and Gimel. There are 3 worlds. There's this world, there's the world to come, which is the world of expansion, and there's the Mashiach, where you have the balance. The Kabbalah says there's 3 parts in a person, or in the person's neshama. There's the lowest level, which is the nefesh, which controls our basic actions, which animals have the same level. Also, animals also eat and drink and procreate and even have a little bit of feeling. The highest level is the neshama, which only people have and Jews have on a special level. And ruach is something in the middle. Ruach is more like deep emotions and in the middle layer. And these are, again, the 3 levels. The 3 holy entities in the world, Hashem, Shabbat, and not just Shabbat, also the holy days, and the people of Israel, right? These are the 3 places where we have exposure to Kedusha. The 3 partners in a man, in the creation of a person, Hashem and his father and mother, right? The Gemara says that there are 3 partners. The woman brings the red part, the meat, etc., the red blood vessels. The father brings the white, the skin and everything that's white, and Hashem brings the neshama. And here you have, again, the white and the red are the 2 extremes, and Hashem bring them into a complete unity. And the final 3 are the 3 dimensions, right? 3 types of dimensions. And we've spoken about this in the past, that there's the space dimension, north, east, south, west, up and down. Those are the 6 directions or like of the space dimension. Einstein told us that there's also a dimension of time. And Avraham Avinu told us that besides these 2 types of dimensions, there's also a dimension of the nefesh, of the neshama. In very basic terms, the way we explained it, and maybe we did it in the series also, if I want to meet with you in a certain place, if I only lived in 1 dimension, like on a railway line, I could just define where we have to meet on a single point, a single number. But if I live on a flat surface, I have to have an X and a Y. I have to tell you 2 numbers. Those are the X and Y dimensions. But if I've got the ability to rise up and fly in the sky, I have to tell you 3 numbers. I'm going to meet you on the corner of Ben Yehuda and Yafo, that's the X and Y, but I'm going to be 20 meters in the air. All these are the dimensions of space. But if I gave you the exact dimension, I'm going to be 20 meters in the air on the corner of Ben Yehuda and Yafo, but I didn't tell you that I'm going to be there at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and you come at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, we're not going to meet. That is space. Rabbi Avinu says, no, there's a third dimension of the neshama. Two people can be in the same place at the same time, and there's no connection. They're not meeting. That is the neshama. So that is, the shortened form of that is Ashan, which actually means smoke, which stands for Olam Shin Nefesh, smoke, what comes when you mix fire and ruach and air, and you get the combination of the extremes coming together. If you take the letters, all the letters that have 3, the Gimel is 3, the Lamed is 30, and the Shin is 300, spells the word sheleg, which is snow. I don't know what you can say about that. Maybe it's water that changes its shape, that becomes something else, right? Again, the idea of synthesis. But it's also interesting that each of them have 3, in their shapes, have 3 distinct features. Given as the line, the little leg in the bottom and the little leg in the front. The Lamed has 1, 2, 3 legs, and the Shin we've spoken about, it's 3 legs. Again, moving on quickly because we've got still a few things to cover. The Shin, because it's got, we spoke about it being a tooth, but making change, the words that have the power of change begin with a Shin. We spoke about Shvira, about changing. Shin are some boils which change the texture of your skin, or if you get a burn, lisrof is to burn, also changes things. Sharav is extreme heat, right? We know that's a chamsin, is sometimes called a sharav, that the extreme heat changes things to a permanent new state. Shalhevet is a flame. Also, all these relating to fire. And the word eish also, even though the Shin doesn't come as the beginning, but you hear eish very strongly. You can almost hear the hissing of the fire, the sound of the Shin, when you say the word eish. Okay? Shinui, change, begins with the Shin. Shein, we spoke about already, is the tooth. Shiluach, lishluach, to send. When you send somebody, goes to a new place. Satan, with the sin, the koach, the negative force that tries to move people from one stage to something negative. A shevet, a staff, a stick that hits people to try and make them do something else. Or the Havdil, Moshe's staff, that brings us out of Egypt and changes the reality of making us a free people and receiving the Torah. Shira, song, has got the power to make change because it goes beyond our logic. It comes from a higher world. And finally, the word for shana is the same word as shina, shone, change. Each year, as time goes, we change, and we should change in a positive way. So you see, Shin is related to change. We need to try and move it in a positive change and not get sucked into a negative change. If you double the Shin, if you have words with 2 Shins, then you have the ultimate power of reproduction. And if you have the 2 Shins, you got these 2 branches, almost looks like the menorah, right? The menorah has 7 branches, the 1 in the middle and 3 and 3, almost like the Shin and Shin. And it also reminds us of the 3 days of the week. There's Sunday, Monday, Tuesday after Shabbos. There's Wednesday, Thursday, Friday before Shabbos, and there's Shabbat, the 1 in the middle. And if you look at words that have 2 Shins in them, you see this ongoingness, right? You have the word shoresh is a root. It goes back to generation to our roots. You have sharsheret, or shalshelet, sometimes called, is a chain. Each link is linked to the next one. And you have shoshana is a rose, where each petal is linked to the other petal, making what seems like almost an infinite number of petals on the rose. And here I've shown a picture of the tfilin shel rosh, the tfilin that we put on our head. And on the tfilin, there's 2 Shins, one on the right-hand side and one on the left-hand side. And the one that's on the right-hand side, it's not a normal Shin. The left-hand side is a normal Shin with 3. Now, the one on the left-hand side has actually got four bars. And how do we explain this? And the idea is here that the 3 is in our rich. It's the synthesis in our rich. But the 4th is beyond our reach. And this is hinted at if you write the Shin upside down and you draw a line around it. In the white, you look at the shape between the black Shin, you get the white four-legged Shin. And this represents the hidden world, the deeper world, that even though we don't realize it's there, it's actually there. And I saw one of the books that this represents the three Avot, Abraham, Isaac, and Yaakov. But actually, the deeper side of the Avot, the force behind every successful man is a woman that actually brings the koach of these men out, are the four Avot, who are imahot, the mothers, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, who are encompassing them. Okay, and there's Shin versus Sin, the left versus right sin, which right is the positive moving force, left is the force that slows us down. It's even within the letter themselves, there's actually two letters, depending on which way you're going. If you like an Aleph going out, or like a Bet holding back. And finally, if you look at the shape of somebody praying, I know that they say, you know, if God forbid you have to call Mada, if you have to call Magen David Adom, you call 101. And I remember a few years ago, there's an advert. How do you remember that the number for Mada is 101? Is if a person's lying flat on his back and his hands are in the air, you got a 101. But here it actually looks at the two hands up in prayer and the head as the three legs of the stick. And here you can see the statue of Moshe Rabbeno when he's praying to Hashem during the war of Amalek. And the Torah says, Kasher Yarim Lado Yevanetzach Yisrael, that when he lifts his hands, Am Yisrael fought them, and when he lowered his hands, Am Yisrael lost the war. And here you see the shape of the Shin, because Moshe Rabbenu, just think of the situation. Yehoshua is down on the ground doing the physical fighting of Amalek. And Moshe is on the mountain doing the spiritual fighting of the forces of Amalek, of the spiritual side of Amalek, and together they were working in harmony. In other words, you have the one extreme, the one Vav, and the other Vav, and the head, which brings everything together, the combination of all of it together. So we're going to go back quickly and look at the first slide again and see how this all comes together. In one sentence, the Shin is the ultimate synthesis of bringing the extremes together. That's why it's got three legs and that are all tied together at the base, three Vavs, or two Vavs and a Zayin, bringing Hashem into the uniting force. And that has the ability to make Shinui, to make change, just like the Shein, the tooth, makes change in a positive way to bring food into us and make us everything we are. And its sound is smooth, the sound of harmony, the sound of bringing things together. And finally, it's the letter of the Shamayim, of the heavens, and the heavens of the earth, again, bringing everything together. So thank you very much. And we put in a lot this week, but hopefully some of it will stay with us for over time.